When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was that my throat felt a bit sore. I tried speaking but couldn't, realizing there was something in my throat. It felt hard. Looking around, I saw I was in a hospital room with tubes and wires connected to various parts of my body. I also noticed a cast on my left arm and bandages on my face. What's going on? I wondered how long I'd been here and what had happened to me. I tried moving but couldn't. It was difficult to get out of bed. The door to my room opened and a nurse came in to check on me. She looked at my chart and checked my vitals, then left the room a few minutes later. She was back with what I presumed was a doctor. He also checked my vitals and flashed a light in my eyes. After he finished, he spoke to the nurse, and the two of them removed the tube that had been placed down my throat. That explained why I couldn't talk earlier. "Welcome back to the land of the living, Mr. Neely," the doctor said, standing up. That was me. My name is Jack Neely, or Jack to my friends. I tried talking, but my throat and lips were too dry. The nurse gave me an ice chip, which I sucked on until it melted. Then she gave me another. How long I managed to croak, "You've been here for 10 days, Mr. Neely. He said you had some swelling on your brain, so we put you in a coma to let your head heal. You took quite a blow to the head, and you also suffered a broken arm." He turned to the nurse and said, "Why don't you call Mrs. Neely and let her know her husband is awake?" I shook my head. My head was spinning when he said that. I told him. He looked at me concerned. "Why not? She's the reason I'm here," I said, sucking on another ice chip. "I see," the doctor said. "Perhaps we should contact the police." I nodded my head yes, and a divorce attorney. The doctor laughed at that. "We'll get the police for you. In fact, there's already been a detective asking us about you." I nodded my head. "Thanks anyway." "You'll have to find your own divorce attorney," I told him. He chuckled, then ordered the nurse to take me down for x-rays. When I was wheeled back into my room, a man in a trench coat came in and introduced himself. He said he was Detective Green from the Metropolis Police Department. He flashed a badge and asked if I was feeling well enough to talk for a few minutes. I took a sip of water and he sat down next to my bed. He pulled out a pad and an audio recorder and set the recorder on the tray in front of me. He turned it on and said, "I hope you don't mind." "If I record this, no, not at all," I said. He spoke into the recorder to mark the date, time, and location of the interview, then turned to me and said, "Okay, Mr. Neely, tell us what happened." Well, I had just got home after spending a couple of days in Pittsburgh with a client. I finished the visit a day early and wanted to get home to be with Julie, my wife. When I got home, I saw a strange car in the driveway. I figured she was probably having company, one of the girls from her office. I parked in the driveway and went into the house. Most of the house was dark, but I saw light coming from upstairs and heard moaning. I had a pretty good idea what was going on, but I went upstairs anyway. That's when I saw them, Jay and some guy having sex in my bed. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Well, I went into the room and yelled, "Hey!" They stopped and looked at me like I was an alien or something. The guy was surprised. I went after him, intending to punch him in the mouth, but he beat me to it. He hit me square in the face once. That was the biggest fist I had ever seen in my life. The next thing I know, I'm waking up here. Detective Green said, "Did you recognize the man with your wife? I've never seen him before. Did you know your wife was having an affair?" he asked. I suspected something was going on, but I wasn't sure. "Wait a minute," I added. "I just remembered there are cameras set up in the house. I hired a private investigator just before my last trip. I wanted to find out if my wife was cheating on me." He wired up the house for audio and video. Just before I left, everything was supposed to be saved to a cloud server. I never got a chance to check when I got home. It's probably still there. Detective Green opened his bag and pulled out a laptop. "Think you can access that from here?" he asked. "I think so. I have the credentials written down on the back of a card he gave me. It should still be in my wallet." The detective went to There was a small wardrobe in the room, and I pulled my wallet out of the back pocket of my trousers. I looked through it and found the card. I handed the wallet back, and he tucked it inside my back pocket. "Angus McGregor," Detective Green said, reading the name on the front of the card. "Is that your PI?" "Yes, it is," I replied. "He's the one who called. He said he'd given the officers a statement and followed the ambulance here to give the hospital your insurance information. Have you spoken to him yet?" I said I had. He told me he'd found you on the floor at the foot of your stairs and called. No one else was in the house at the time. Let's see what the video shows us, he added as he fired up his laptop and connected to the hospital's Wi-Fi. Once he was connected, he turned the laptop so I could log in. I entered the information Julius had written on the card and was presented with a directory listing of videos. I selected the video corresponding to the time I was at the house and hit play. The video began with Julie, my soon-to-be ex-wife. Mel asked, "Do you recognize that man?" "Yes," I replied. "He's the one who hit me. I've never seen him before that day." We continued watching the video after looking around the room. Julie turned to the man and gave him a kiss. "Let's go upstairs and finalize our deal." The big man sneered, "Let's do it." They walked up the stairs and the video ended shortly afterwards. I remember Julius telling me the cameras were motion activated, so I went back to the directory and double-clicked on the next one in the list. The video started with Julie and the two. Julie walked over to her side of the dresser, opened one of the drawers and pulled out a thick envelope. She handed it to the man, who pulled out a huge wad of cash and quickly counted it. He put it back in the envelope, half now, half later. "When the job is done," Julie said, just as we agreed. Holy crap, she thought. Was she paying this guy to kill me? He sneered as he looked her over. "Well, sweet cheeks," he said. "What do you say we seal this little deal?" "Julie." She smiled as she looked him over, then started undressing. Soon she was naked before him. The man took his clothes off and they embraced one more time before getting on the bed. He asked her which side her husband slept on. She giggled and pointed to the side closest to the door. "He sleeps right there," she said. "Good." Pulling the covers back, he told her. "Go on, get over there." "You're so wicked," she said. We watched as the two of them had sex on my side of the bed. That's when I walked in and caught them in the act. "What the hell is going on here?" I yelled in the video. The two of them stopped what they were doing long enough to take a look at me. Julie had a smirk on her face as the big man stood up. I watched myself charge the much bigger man as he stood there, but he pulled back with one fist and caught me right in the middle of my face, causing me to fall down instantly. Then he picked me up by my collar and hit me again. He hit me in the face several times, then dragged my limp body out of the room. Julie got out of bed and followed, not bothering to cover herself. The video ended at that point. I went back to the directory and selected the next video. It showed 3 sets of feet at the top of the staircase. One set of feet was mine. I was the only one with shoes on. The big man picked me up and threw me down the stairs. My body lay still at the bottom. "Is he dead?" Julie asked. "I don't know," the man replied. "Finish him off," I said. "Not in my house," the man replied. "I don't want to have to clean any more of his blood than I have to." "Let him lay there," I said. "Maybe he'll do us both a favor and die," the man replied. "Even if he doesn't, I can come back and finish the job," I said. "Let's get out of here. We can finish what we started at my hotel room a couple of minutes later." July and the man came back down the stairs, dressed, and walked out of the house, stepping over my body. The video ended shortly after that. I was curious, so I checked the next video and opened it up. I saw an anus coming inside the house. He checked on me, then pulled out his phone and called. He sat next to me until the paramedics and police arrived. I ended the video and checked the directory. There were no more videos after that. Whatever the cheaters had done, they'd apparently chosen to do it somewhere other than the house. What now? "Well, we need to find your wife and her accomplice and arrest them." "You're sure you've never met that man before?" "No, never. You sound like you know who he is. His real name is James Hammond. Detective Green said he goes by Jimmy the Ham. He's a hitman wanted by the feds for a string of murders. He's well known for killing his victims with his bare hands after he cuckolds them. You're lucky to be alive. I just can't figure out why your wife would want you dead. From what I know, you're basically a salesman and account representative." I said, correcting him, "I travel a bit and I do some sales, but most of my job is keeping customers happy by keeping them profitable." "Any problems in the marriage?" Green asked. "Not until recently," I told him. "Are you one of those guys who play around when he's out of town?" Nell asked. "No," I said. "I'd never cheat on my wife when I have that at home waiting for me." "So you saw her, right? Would you be chasing other women with that at home?" "I don't think so." Green said revenge is out as a motive. "Do you have a life insurance policy?" "I do. I have $1 million policy through my work. It pays double in the event of an accident, and my wife is the beneficiary. Green asked, Yes, but there's more. What's that? I won a lottery. The prize was a bit of a windfall, $3 million after taxes. I was planning to treat July to a cruise for our anniversary. Did she know about the money? Green asked. I told her I'd won, but I didn't tell her how much. I usually handle all our finances, so I didn't think she'd find out. She rarely looks at the bank statements, so if something were to happen to her, you could end up with as much as $5 million. Green asked, Do you think she'd really kill you for money? After thinking it over, I said, One of the oldest motivations known to man. Green said, Why don't you log into your account and see how much you have left? I did, and found that July had made 3 withdrawals of $5,000. Over the last 12 days, she'd taken out 0,000. While you're here, why don't you cancel any joint credit cards you may have? Once you're done, I'll put a temporary freeze on the account. He suggested I cancel our joint credit cards and report her ATM card as stolen. When I finished, he made a call to get an order freezing Julie out of the account. Any idea where your wife is now? He asked. He finished, shaking his head. I don't know where she is. Normally she'd be at home at this time of day, but I really don't know. Angus might know, Mel asked. I nodded. Give him a call. He handed me his phone. We've been playing phone tag the last few days, so he'll be expecting a call from me anyway. I took the phone and dialed Angus's number. He answered after the second ring. McGregor said, Angus, this is Jack Neely. Jack, you're awake. Angus said, Thank you. I was really worried this isn't your phone, though. No, Detective Green is with me in the hospital. Even better, he said. I've been trying to get in touch with him, but we keep missing each other. Angus, do you know where Julie is? I asked. I thought that was pretty funny. So, where is Mrs. Neely now? Mel asked. She's at the international airport, and she just purchased a ticket for Chicago. The plane doesn't leave for 4 hours, though, so you should have enough time to apprehend her. What about James Hammond Green? Is he with her? Not now, Angus said. From what I've learned, he said to meet her there in the next couple of days. Okay, Green said. Angus, you keep an eye on her. I'll make a call and have her apprehended. Will do, Angus said. When the call ended, the detective called his partner and told him to get an arrest warrant for Julie. He then made another call and put out an all-points bulletin for Hammond. By the time he finished, the doctor came back into the room. How long is Mr. Neely going to be here? Mel asked. Probably a few more days. He's healing just fine, but he took a pretty bad beating. Yes, I can see that, Mel said. I'm going to arrange for a couple of officers to stand guard over him while he's here. If that's okay with you, I'm fine with it. Just don't get in the way, the doctor said. Mel turned to me and said, You take care of yourself, Jack. We'll be in touch. Call if you need anything. Thanks, Detective. My pleasure, he responded, standing up. Good to see you again. Good to see you too, Detective Green, she said with a smile. After he left the room, I looked at Alicia. I take it you know him? I asked. Yes, I represented him in his divorce, she said. I'll get this sorted and have your wife served in jail. Let me get you a check for your retainer. Would you mind grabbing my wallet out of my trousers, please? I have a habit of keeping a blank check in my wallet for emergencies, so I pulled it out and wrote it for the amount she requested. She smiled as she accepted the check and placed it in her briefcase. We'll be in touch, Jack, she said as she stood up. Good luck. Thank you for your help, I said. I watched. As she walked out the door, I was forced to turn my attention back to the television. Everything good must come to an end, as they say. After a couple of weeks, the doctor said I had healed enough to go home. In that time, I received several visitors, friends and colleagues from work, Angus and Detective Green, who kept me in the loop about the case against Julie and the ongoing manhunt for Hammond. Mel told me Sylvester had been charged with conspiracy to commit murder. Julie was served divorce papers while in jail. Alicia told me she signed the papers without any argument whatsoever, which surprised me. In 60 days, I would be a free man. She said I would get the house and all of our assets. Julie would be allowed to keep her car, clothes, and personal items. I called her parents, and they arranged to pick everything up. What they did with it after that was their business. Angus picked me up from the hospital and took me home. Just curious, do you have a gun? It was just an old shotgun that my dad gave me when I was 17. I said it was a present for my birthday, and that my dad would take me out shooting trap and skiing. Those were some of my happiest memories. I still had the shotgun, but I hadn't fired it in quite a while. It sat oiled up in my locked gun case, along with a box of shells for it. I asked Hammond if he still had it, and he said he might want to keep it handy. I thought that night when I pulled the old shotgun out and gave it the once-over, it was in good shape, even though I hadn't used it in a long time, so I pulled out the box of shells and loaded it up. I thought about sleeping in the master bedroom, but I couldn't, not after what I had witnessed there before. So I slept on my recliner in the living room with the loaded shotgun within reach. That turned out to be a wise move. I woke up late that night after I thought I heard some scratching outside the house. I grabbed the shotgun and looked around from where I sat. I only had one good arm, so I decided to use my left arm. I looked and thought I saw a silhouette of a large man just inside the sliding glass door that leads into the backyard. As I looked, the silhouette moved and I saw a large pistol in one of his hands. I thought I'd get the drop on him, so I reached over and flipped the switch on my lap. When I did, I saw him, James Hammond, and he was armed. He looked at me surprised. I saw him start too. I raised my shotgun and fired at him. He fell back against the screen door, nearly taking it out of its tracks in the process. He fired around from his pistol, but his bullet ended up in the ceiling. I got up, pumped another round into the chamber and fired again. That round hit him square in the chest and put his body through the screen door. I saw him lying on my deck, blood pouring out from his body. I picked up the phone and called. I pumped another round I chambered another round and walked slowly to the door. I stood over Hammond's body and was about to put a third round into him when I saw flashing lights. Before I knew it, the place was filled with officers with their guns drawn. I put the shotgun down and raised my hand so they could see I was unarmed. One of the officers checked Hammond for a pulse and shook his head. Another officer called for an ambulance. I spent the next hour or so giving my statement to the officers. Just when I thought it was all over, the ambulance arrived. Detective Green drove in behind the paramedics. They checked Hammond for a pulse and, when they couldn't find one, put his body in a bag. They put the bag on a gurney and took him away, stopping only to let Mel look at Hammond's face. "You all right?" he asked. I nodded my head. I was still a bit shaken by the whole experience. I had never shot a man before, and I certainly had never killed anyone until that night. The only thing I had ever killed was a clay pigeon. "Yeah, I'll be fine." Mel turned to the other officers in the room. The house was almost done. "We're wrapping it up now, Detective. Make sure I get a report on this as soon as possible." "We'll do that. How about I buy you a cup of coffee after they're done?" "Yeah, that sounds good. Let me go throw something on. I don't think they'd care for me to come in my pajamas." "Probably not." I left the front room and headed upstairs after changing into a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. I went back downstairs. The other officers had just left, and Mel was waiting for me. He asked, "Yeah, I'm ready." We left the house and got into his car. He drove us to a coffee shop that served light food, not far from the house. We went inside and ordered our coffee. It had been a while since I'd had one. I'd had a caramel mocha, so I ordered one too. Mel chuckled as he paid the bill. "You said you wanted coffee." "I meant a large, not liquid candy. It's been a while since I've had one of these, so I thought I'd treat myself." We sat down and took a sip of our drinks. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay." "Have you ever shot anyone?" "No." "Have you ever killed anyone?" "Yeah. The first time it happened, I nearly threw up. I was just a rookie cop. I hadn't been on the beat for a whole month like you, Jack. I knew it was either him or me, and I was determined that it wouldn't be me in a body bag." "You had the benefit of training." I said, "I don't think you can ever truly train anyone to handle something like that." He said, "You got lucky. Don't you think that's true, Hammond?" I said quietly, "I know. The important thing is that you're alive and he's not. Thankfully, we have castle laws in this state, so you won't be prosecuted." Mel smiled as he chuckled. He pulled a card out of his pocket and handed it to me. I read the name on the card, Dr. Rose Carlson. Nell suggested I give her a call. She's the best counselor in the business. If anyone can help you get through all this, she can. "Thanks, I'll do that." We sat for a while drinking coffee while talking about various things. We chatted about fishing, football, and general stuff for a while after we finished our drinks. Mel checked his watch and said, "I've got to get back to work. You ready to head out?" "I'm ready." 30 a.m. I got up, showered, and ate some breakfast. I thought there was one last thing I needed to do after making a call, so I went to the county jail where Julie was being held. I sat in the visiting area and watched as Julie was brought out. She looked tired, and the orange jumpsuit she was wearing didn't suit her. Julie was wearing an orange jumpsuit, which didn't do much for her at all. She sat in the chair across from me and picked up the phone on her side of the plexiglass partition between us. I picked up the phone on my side. "Hello, Julie," I said. "Hello, Jack," she responded. "What do you want?" "I just want to know what's going on." I asked her how long this has been going on with Sylvester. She said it's been a few months, maybe 2 or 3. I asked why I wasn't good enough for her. Was it something I did or said? I don't know. I guess I was taken in by his charm. We talked about having kids, and I was scared. I was afraid I'd get fat and ugly, and you wouldn't find me attractive anymore. That's nonsense, Charlie, and you know it. That doesn't excuse what you did. There has to be something else. What is it? Was it the money? Julie looked down sheepishly before answering. "Well, I guess so," she said. "Sylvester told me we could use that to run away and start fresh. Maybe take a cruise around the world." "Is that why you decided to have me kill Julie?" I asked. "Sylvester said he could arrange it so I would get all of the money plus your insurance," she said. "She didn't have to pay big bucks for a divorce. He put you in touch with Hammond," I asked. "Did you know Hammond was Sylvester's uncle?" I asked. Again, Julie nodded her head in agreement. She said, "Why screw Hammond?" "I'll give you a discount if you screw me in our bed," he said. "That's when you walked in and caught us. You just left me for dead." "I'm sorry," Julie said, tears falling down her cheeks as she nodded. Her head, she stammered. "I'm sorry, Hammond is dead," I told her after an awkward silence. She looked at me, shocked. "What do you mean dead?" she asked. "He came by to finish the job. You paid him to do it. I killed him when he broke into the house. When I was a kid, I told him to get lost and he left. I forgot all about that shotgun." She said she looked at me with sad eyes. "I'm so sorry about everything. Do you think you can ever forgive me?" I laughed out loud, loud enough to catch the guard's attention for a moment. "You've got to be joking, July. I said I'll never forgive you for what you did. From what I understand, you'll have the rest of your life to think about it. I hope it was worth it to you. Goodbye, July." I hung up the phone, not wanting to hear any more from her. She hung up and looked at me with tears in her eyes. I got up, turned around, and walked away. The next 2 months went by pretty quickly. It took a while, but I finally got everything I wanted packed and out of the house. After doing some minor repairs to the place, I put it up for sale and bought a nice condo not far from my office. I was called to testify in Julie's trial as well as Sylvester's. It didn't take the jury long to find them both guilty of all charges. A week later, I was asked to address the court for Julie's sentencing. The judge thanked me for I was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Sylvester got the same sentence. As it turned out, I had a life sentence too, but I didn't serve it in prison. Julie's cheating and attempt to have me murdered affected me more than I thought it would. My body had healed, but I was a wreck emotionally. I spent the next 2 years in counseling with Dr. Carlson, who said I was suffering from a form of PTSD. I worked, came home, ate, watched television, and went to bed. I hit the gym 3 times a week and went to counseling. Once a week, that was my life. I couldn't even bring myself to go out or ask a woman for a date. I just didn't trust anyone. As for sex, well, let's just say I'd watched adult movies from time to time and got very acquainted with my right hand. Finally, Rose suggested I put my fears aside and ask someone out. I considered it for some time before I finally had the courage to take that next step. But I wondered, who should I ask? There were quite a few women in my office who had expressed an interest in me, but I was concerned about dating coworkers. After a long time, I finally asked Rhonda, a colleague who worked in a different section of the company, out for dinner. I was amazed when she accepted. We had a great time, and I felt more relaxed with her than I originally thought I would. We didn't have sex on that first date, but it happened after the third date, and it shocked my world. We've been dating now for about 6 months and things are going quite well. I even introduced her to my parents, and we seem to get along just fine. I don't know if I'll ever marry again. One day perhaps, but I'm just taking things one day at a time. Who knows what the future will bring? Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. If you haven't already, feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.